You, Sandra. That's brilliant. Lovely. Um, Welcome from me as well. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this evening. As Sandra said, this is been a long journey of discovery and sharing, and I think excitement and interest of what we've been able to learn and share with one another over the past 8 months. It's arisen out of an interest in making Dorset somewhere that's more resilient in terms of its food, considering where it's grown, how it's shared, how we access food, and looking at a whole range of different aspects around our food experiences in Dorset, with different organisations presenting. And over that 8 months, we've had some amazing presentations, not least from the Sustainable Food Place team. And it is something that we wondered might be useful to structure some of our collective work. So amongst us tonight, and those that have sent their apologies and are part of the wider network, we have an enormous wealth of activists, dreamers, doers, people who are really good at connecting things together, people who are just fantastic about kind of spotting opportunities and sharing them and working on them together, and those that are prepared to take a good hard look at how we do things and say we could do better. And one of the things the Sustainable Food Places structure allows us to do is to think about that in a slightly more ordered way than sometimes, and to think about how we can work on different aspects of our food agenda in Dorset in a more coherent way, and think about who needs to be involved in those conversations. This process that we've been through has had all sorts of participants, people who grow things, people who process food and turn it into things that we can eat, people who are concerned about poverty and about access to nutritious food, food skills, social food, cultural issues around food, and issues around the climate and the challenges that we face with the climate emergency, and how agriculture and horticulture and the way we consume things has an impact on that in our food economy. We also talked about things where we were considering our whole county, what's going on across the whole of Dorset, looking at different ways people are coming together to tackle some of the issues that they feel passionate about in their different communities. And we've heard from people from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area, grounded community. We've had people talking about the growing projects in Ringwood and Burwood. And from our Planet Doctors, we've had amazing presentations from people of Bridport, and looking at the resilience and connectivity that's been built into the new plans for Bridport, which were presented last time, were extremely stimulating. And we've had experts in the room from other places, from the Tamar area of Cornwall, looking at how they pulled together their network to create new ways of working together, and what systems they found useful to open up better ways, different ways of looking at our food, looking at their food supply and sharing, looking at how to change models around wholesale supply, looking at how people could basically do things like procurement, and whether there are systems that we're missing in our normal way of doing things that we could add into our local food system that would improve things. How we can look at getting wholesale systems that work well for small producers, for instance. How we can look to our large scale food consumers, like our hospitals and their council and schools, how we could work with them perhaps to create more local food that would supply their needs. How would that work? Some really thorny, really challenging questions, as well as looking at the difficulties that we've encountered during this period around cost of living and the poverty that people have experienced. And there's some amazing people in the room tonight who've stepped forward and done absolutely extraordinary work to try and meet those needs. There's also people that are looking at this from health perspective. Paul and Naomi are here, and that there are many others in the room tonight and who've been connected to this, who are looking at this as a population health issue. So making sure people have the right food, nutritious food that's good to eat and that contributes to health instead of harms health. So between us all over this journey, we've had some amazing discussions, and we've reached a point tonight where we wanted to think, what do we do next? Do we become a sustainable food place? And if we do, there is a certain set of criteria we need to look at. And those criteria fall around 6 dimensions. And they fit with all the things we've talked about. It's interesting that although we didn't necessarily start with working through them deliberately, we have covered them. There are representatives here who've been part of the conversation over the 8 months who tackle all of these things, who have a view, who have influence and have an interest in that. So tonight we're going to go through those different themes and have a look at them, and not for me to talk, but for you to talk and for you to wrestle with some of those things and see how we go forward together. The idea at this point is that we don't know whether a sustainable food place is the right option for Dorset. It's absolutely on the table. But some of the things that the sustainable food place offers in terms of its tools, its ways of thinking, its methodologies could be really useful to us at this time to tackle some of the things that we're all interested in. And we're not all interested in the same thing. And that's one of the beauties of this model, is that it works together, but through difference and diversity. And that's something that I hope we'll see in the conversations tonight. You can see how we can be together in this endeavor, in a shared endeavor, but actually do things differently in different places, depending on what our experiences, our expertise, and opportunities are. So I'm going to paste into the chat the 6 different dimensions that sit within the structure of the sustainable food place model, and we'll come back to those in the discussion a little bit later. Tonight, as I said, is mostly about us talking and thinking about what we do next. And in order to help us with that, Bee's going to have a few moments to kind of present some of the pros and cons of what a sustainable food place could offer to us at this point, and give us a bit of a deeper dive into those kinds of questions. So over to you, Bee. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank you very much, John. Yes, so I work for the Land Workers Alliance as a horticulture campaigns coordinator, and I've been really getting to know the Sustainable Food Places network much more over the last year. And my main motivation for doing that has been because Land Workers Alliance represents land workers, including many, many horticultural growers. And one of the things I've become aware of over the last few years is the barriers that those growers have to accessing urban markets. And so it feels like a very natural progression to connect with sustainable food places, because the local food partnerships represent places where growers could connect into markets. But it feels like it's just joining the dots in local places. So I've been really learning a lot more over the last year about sustainable food places, and was, because of this, ended up going to the Sustainable Food Places conference last March, which was a truly uplifting event. I mean, it was just felt so good to be with so many committed food activists who are working on health, who are working on local food systems, on food poverty, a whole range of different issues. But it really showed me the strength of the local food partnerships and many aspects which we'll be touching on tonight. And I just wanted to say, from what John said in his introduction, it feels like you've covered many of the valuable bases and really brought some of the people doing exciting work into these meetings already. So it feels like you're already started on a good route. So I have to admit, I've not had as much time as I'd hoped to prepare for tonight, because the last week has been extraordinarily busy. But I have thrown together 3 slides about the pros and the cons. And I also just was able to email somebody who I know who works for one of the food partnerships, who gave me an unequivocal yes, go for it, when I said, what's your experience been? Admittedly, she works as an employee of one of the food partnerships, so you could say, well, she's going to say that's a good thing because it gives her job, but I do trust her. So I will just share my screen very quickly and run through some of these pros and cons. So, oh no, sorry, wrong wrong one. Stop share. Try again. So okay, and view slideshow. Is everyone seeing that? So yes,
Yeah.
The most obvious reason for becoming a sustainable food place, but I think it's worth really stating, is that it's part of a bigger national movement for change. And rather than working in isolation, when there are actually a lot of people doing this kind of thing in other parts of the country, Sustainable Food Places provides a framework for connecting up with all of those other places. And as such, it can give support and training for events. And so people who are tapped into this network can access the regular online meetings for peer-to-peer learning. I think that although it may seem, you could see it as being a bit naff having the award system with bronze, silver and gold awards, I think it does actually give a really good structured progression towards sustainability. And I think that a lot of external organizations really value that. And I think if you do go, and you don't actually have to go for the award system, you can become a sustainable food place without doing the rewards. You can be part of the network. But if you do choose to progress through the awards, it can give kudos that can then actually attract attention from other bodies in the locality, which will then hopefully start to actually give more support for it. I think you could make the argument that many people in Bridport and Dorset are working towards this anyway, so why not get national recognition for it? And maybe it wouldn't actually add much more work beyond what needs to be done anyway. And I think that the structure of encouraging partnership working between community volunteers, local authorities, businesses, and NGOs is a really useful structure for making sure that you're not neglecting a particular part. But it does sound like in Dorset that is already happening quite well already. And then one extra pro, which I just noticed when browsing through the Sustainable Food Places website tonight, was there was a report there that was saying that areas of Wales which had pre-existing Sustainable Food Places partnerships were actually better able to coordinate to access government funding, particularly a Welsh pot of, I think, 2.5 million for food poverty funding. So I think in terms of getting your ducks in a row for when these pots come along, that seems like quite a strong argument in itself. So yes, I will now move on to cons, which is a much shorter list. But yes, so I mean, I think one con is, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Dorset and Bridport already have a long track record of supporting local food systems and working towards better food, health, environmental measures. And you can really ask, is it really necessary to become part of this other organization? And I think the risk, and I can imagine maybe the fear, is that this would actually add an extra layer of unnecessary bureaucracy, especially when this is being done by volunteers who are already really busy. I have to admit, I'm not that familiar with whether it costs something, and if so, what those costs are. But I mean, cost can be more than just financial cost. It's a cost of time and other commitments. So I think that's something to bear in mind. And I think that, well, I understand that compared to a few years ago, unfortunately, Sustainable Food Places is no longer providing funding for coordinators or for campaigns. Although I think that there are resources for peer-to-peer. There's something called PeerLink, which the person I contacted was mentioning. So I'll just move on to, so this, all these comments came from the result of a very quick email to one contact I knew, and I was hoping to have time to do a bit more sleuthing because I actually know quite a few people who are involved in sustainable food places in different ways. But this person came back with an emphatic yes, that she loves being a member of sustainable food places. And quite a lot of the points that she made actually echo some of my pros, such as being part of the framework of shared aims and themes. So it being easy to draw on those, and it makes it easier to communicate the message, and being part of a wider recognized network, and it being powerful to work together towards climate change, towards policy change, not climate change. But hopefully it will help work towards preventing climate change being as bad as it could be. I think the fact that there's always someone that you can draw on is a really powerful advantage. And I think it's much easier to draw on that network of help if you are a formal part of the network than if you're outside it. And then being part of a system and being able to join the dots, it sounds like that it's not just my perception from the outside, but I think that Sustainable Food Places really does do that well. And as someone who's working for them, I think this person has really benefited from the webinars, the conferences, the support, the campaigns, and it's really been a very enriching experience. And yes, so she made the point that even though the funding for coordinators is no longer in place, it sounds like this peer link system, which I don't really know that much about, covers time costs for the host partnership when they're giving peer support, and also travel costs. So there is some funding support, even if it's not as generous as it used to be. So yes, I'm going to leave it there and hand back to John and Sandra. So
thank you very much. Thank you. John, did you want to respond or add anything or continue?
Yeah, thank you. That's incredibly helpful setting that context out there. I think that the thing that I'd want to stress with this discussion tonight, the sustainable food places is not just about talk. It's about doing, and it's about doing more and doing better together. And so this is very much an activist kind of active space where we want to make change and we want to kind of make things better because we have better connections. And this has been a theme, I think, through a lot of our meetings. The concept of sustainability, Pam, in answer to your question, is very broad. It's about our ability to grow food in a way that doesn't deplete the environment, in a way that doesn't become inaccessible to people because they can't afford it, or where they have an inability to kind of access nutritious food. So it's a very wide definition of sustainability. I can put a link in the chat in a minute so that you can see the words from the horse's mouth, as it were, from the Sustainable Food Places website. So tonight, what we'd like to do is to reflect on our experiences and our aspirations together, very much in that active space. How does this work? Would it be useful for us to harness ourselves in a practical way, a pragmatic way, not adding to the burden of activity that we all need to do on our day jobs, but actually to bring ourselves together collectively in a way that we can speak with a much stronger voice and support one another in a much more broad way across the county in the work that we do, and link one another together so that we can achieve even more. The one of the things that I've prepared is and if you don't like them, that's fine. I've prepared a little survey monkey to see, of the people that are in the room tonight, what are the areas of interest across those 6 dimensions. You might like them all, you might want to be involved in all of them, or you might be involved in all of them, but who have we got in terms of our stakeholders and our influencers and our activists in the room tonight? What areas of those six different dimensions are your passion? Where is it that you're working particularly? And you can pick more than one. I'm just going to paste it into the chat. And before we go into the breakout room, just give you a couple of moments, if you wouldn't mind, just clicking on the link in the chat, filling in the survey, and then we'll have a look at the spread and the coverage of the people that are representing all sorts of different parts of our food network across Dorset. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to do that, and then we're going to go into the breakout rooms and have a chat about how this could support your work and your concerns and activities across Dorset. Okay, thank you. Starting to see the results coming through. I'll put something up at the end of our conversation tonight to show what we've learned about who's in the room and where the interests are and the coverage across these six different dimensions. So in terms of our breakout rooms, and invite you to think about some of these themes and having a look at the things that you're interested in, how you would feel a sustainable food place or a partnership, a wider partnership across all these themes might be beneficial to you, and what you might want to see happening as a result of this partnership. So we're going to go into a number of breakout rooms. You'll be taken through the miracle of science into some breakout rooms. If one person from each group would be able to feed back some of the themes, that would be absolutely fantastic. And we'll have about 10 minutes at the very end to talk through as a whole group what we've learned and what you think about this concept of working together and how we might do that.
So I'll be opening the rooms now, and if there's any questions from anybody before you go into a room, feel free to ask.
David, do you want to come on the question?
Well, just two quick questions. One about territory and cost. There was a mention that there's a cost of becoming a sustainable food place. I just wondered if you knew what that was, or at what scale are we thinking? Is it county-wide that we would join as a sustainable food place? It might just clarify that before we go into the breakouts would help, I think.
Yeah, the principle would be that we try and do this as a whole county. I think we've in the discussions we've had over the 8 months, I think we recognise that it's about the right scale to take this on if we're going to do the large scale questions around land use and about supply chains. We do well to kind of think at that kind of larger level rather than to support the work then that happens at the town and locality level. And this would give us the kind of next scale of support and influence and networking to be able to do those things. So at a county level is what we're thinking at this point. And in terms of the cost, that's to be kind of confirmed, basically, whether we go forward with this or whether we do something in a similar vein, but not through the Sustainable Food Places piece directly. I hope that helps.
So the breakout rooms are open. You should find yourself with a group. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Been rudely disturbed in your conversations and flown back into the main room. And yeah, I think that's everybody. I mean, it would be great. What do you think, John? It would be great to get some pointers from each of the discussions, I think, to see what people have been speaking about. And we had 6 rooms. So what I'd like to do is, because I know that David has to go shortly, is perhaps if I could start with room 2, which is David and Ellie and Jackie and Claire. If each sort of room could feed back a few key points that we could then assemble afterwards, that would be fantastic. So can we start with that room? Whoever's going to speak for that room.
I'll just speak quickly and then pass over to anybody if I miss anything out. But essentially, I think our room 2, we thought it was a really good idea to think about joining the sustainable food places. And I think we're particularly attracted by the idea that the awards ladder allows you to get some credibility about what you're doing, but also potentially opens up access to funding that would then support the activity in the county. And I think the other thing that we thought was really valuable was the ability to use the Sustainable Places, Food Places network to coordinate our activities. So there's some key blockages in the system at the moment that we're probably working on individually in a scattered sort of sense, whereas through a partnership, we might be able to brigade our efforts a little bit better to push for particularly things like land access for horticulture, etc., and working with the County Farms Network to try and make some breakthroughs that would make a big difference to local food production. And I think it would be good for the relationship between the various organisations and Dorset Council. I think that having this partnership sitting between the council and the voluntary efforts and the parish and town councils, I think would facilitate better action in this area. So I think we were quite supportive. And I think from the town council's point of view, if there's a need to put some resource, either staff time or supporting a volunteer to sit on a steering group, then we would more than happy look at that if that was needed to get this partnership going. So I'm sorry, I've got to go at 7, but I'll open it to Ellie and some of the others in my group, in case I missed anything.
Yeah, thanks very much, David. That's really some really good points, really useful. Anybody else from that group like to add anything before we move on to the next group? Or did David cover it all? Oh, everybody, yep, thumbs up on that one. Okay, so if we could have some thoughts from room 1, that was with Kaz, Carol Jones, Alex, Bev, Andrew.
Well, the group asked me to give a bit of feedback. So I'm Kat from Dorset Food and Drink, and we had a bit of a conversation about what's going on out there at the moment. We sort of overall said it's a good idea, but it's such a big agenda. It's like, where do we start? You know, where there's already lots of things happening across the county. How did we possibly join all that together? Because there are some great stuff. There's some great stuff going on. But yeah, how do we bring that together? It's a big agenda, and food waste was talked about as a big issue as well. And how can we make the most of some of the food waste that we can buy to feed families and buy at a reasonable price? And I'm not suggesting going around markets and picking up stuff on the floor. It's to do it in a coordinated way. But we just feel it is a big agenda. We also touched on trying to eat seasonably and looking at, you know, could we do something? Could we help people fall in love again with mackerel and fishing? Fishes that are good for you, but of course people often don't know how to cook a fish. So we had a brief conversation about tinned fish and the benefits of that. But you know, you can go round and round. It's just it's a big agenda. I think that was really what we thought. So Carol, I don't know if you want to add anything about anything.
I think the thing is that there are so many people here, all with a different background and all with their own agenda. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, my own agenda really is that food poverty should be prioritised over food waste. And what would be really good would be to have, whether there are groups that could come together that we could procure as a group, that would help costs, because cost is certainly, it's our biggest issue in terms of food costs. And we would love to buy from local farms and local producers, but we just can't access those directly. So we end up by bulk buying and spending 15,000 a month with Morrison's on their bulk delivery situations. So it would be great to bring something together. And as far as the green agenda goes, honestly, the families we deal with, they don't care. They just need food on their table, and that is not a priority for the sector that I'm involved with anyway.
Thanks very much, Carol. Thanks, that's some really useful points. If I can move on to the third group, that's with Kate Trevitt, Ken Huggins, Janet Webster, that group.
That was the one that I was in, so I did volunteer. So yeah, I think the overwhelming sense was yes, because the diversity of the areas that we were talking about in these 6 kind of themes was felt to be so interrelated. You know, there's clearly an overlap there, and that we are stronger together. We had two absolutely brilliant little quotes. One was "United we stand" and "Dig for Dorset," just showing kind of how we can kind of pull together, and that so many of these things are interdependent. You know, whether it's teaching children to cook and help families with cooking on a budget, cooking in a seasonal way that Kaz was mentioning, looking at the kind of commonality that we have, as well as the difference that we have between our different areas of interest. The idea that we would be able to draw on a wider pool of support and advice to help us with some of those barriers and blocks that Dave mentioned. Also looking at engaging at a kind of more robust level with some of our food networks and our influencers. So whether that's with the councils, with politicians, and or with supermarkets as well, and looking at kind of how they influence our local food access and food economy. But also that level of kind of solidarity with one another, that was felt to be really strong, that, you know, wherever we are and whatever we're doing in our way, in our different roles and different ways that we do this work, that we have that sense of being in a common purpose and being there to support one another. And this kind of network, this group meeting being a really good example of that, of saying, well, you know, this is my thing, this is what we're doing, that's your thing, I can give you, you know, my enthusiasm and support and encouragement, and be here to support you, even if I haven't got the skills to be able to do what it is you do. It's that sense of common purpose was really seen to be valuable. So, but also keeping a very clear eye on pragmatism and the practicalities of what this might entail, not making it a burden, I think was really important as well.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, John, also, and to that group. Is there anything anybody wanted to add from that group? That sounds comprehensive.
Can I just say that I do understand and agree with Carol Jones, that the reality for many people is that if it's buy 3 for 1 or whatever, you know, they need to do that. And if it's full of nasty chemicals and all the rest of it, but they can afford to eat it, the reality is it's all right for us who can afford nice food and go to the deli in Fordington occasionally, but the realities that I don't know anything about, but Carol does, are quite different. So
thanks
anyway,
very much.
shutting up.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for that. So then I'm then on to room 4. That's with Pam Rosling, Peter Wilson, Nandower, another John Sloper. Yes. Do we have? Oh, you're muted at the moment. Sorry, Barbara. I think you're Barbara, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Barbara Evans. I think I was asked to just feedback, but please, anyone in the group, feel free to add anything. Generally, we felt what had been presented, we were in agreement with, from the people that shared their views. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the various dimensions, particularly around food. We talked around the journey we've been on as far as how we've moved from food banks through to more social supermarkets, etc., and how that journey has continued. But the big question that came out of it, with how we've seen changes happening, is how to make that more sustainable. And from the point of view of the dimensions, there are so many partners involved in so many elements of the whole food process, through healthier food or tackling food poverty. How do we pull all that together? We talked about the bigger picture around food poverty, including debt management, housing benefits, etc., and also around how improving what is done, how the food is used through cookery groups, and helping people use more food more in a better way. We talked a lot around food waste. So generally there was an agreement with the approach. There were some examples around already where many organisations have been tried to be pulled together into meetings to help share ideas and move things forward, but how difficult that has been to do. And there were some discussions around who could help with pulling that together, and what a task that would be, a large task that would be, really. So getting the right partners involved to help move it forward was a key message at the end of that, really. Those were the key points I took. Is there anyone else from the group that would like anything that I may have missed?
Seems like you've done a comprehensive job there. Great. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. So if we can move on to room 5, that was with Rebecca and B, that's Richard Toft, Robin Carter. Somebody feeding back from that room?
Yes, just as we got sent back to the main room, I volunteered, but please, if either of you would like to, I can't see Paul. I think he must have left the call, but yes, so just as a summary right at the end, we talked about whether people were in favour of joining sustainable food places, and there was generally support, but there was one sort of caveat, which was a bit of a concern about doing it county-wide, and because it just feels like such a big county, and could it not be broken down into smaller units that collaborate, maybe? But generally, I think 3 of us were quite behind it. Well, I think all 4 of us were behind it, but with that caveat from one person. So we had 2 people who worked in health in our group, and we talked a bit about community fridges and the system, the sort of concerns that although that's providing free food for people who need it, the fact that actually that in the long term might not be so beneficial, because a lot of the free food that's being provided is really processed and not that healthy, and the fact it's free and that it's easy is actually supporting this whole encouraging people to eat unhealthy food. And there was a bit of a sense of sort of overwhelm by the power of the food system that we're trying to change, but then at the same time I think that fed into the general support for being part of sustainable food places as a framework that could actually bring together smaller community action and sustainable action that's already happening, and bring it into a much more coordinated structure that can actually address some of these wider institutional problems. Because there was a bit of skepticism about how far we can go when the food system is just so powerful, but that we've got a greater chance of addressing it if we're within this structure that brings us all together. And then we talked a bit towards the end about county farms, and about how the county farm network was quite a good place to start. And there was a sense that if we did form a Sustainable Food Places committee, one action that we could do early on is to do a sort of audit of where county farms are at the moment in Dorset, how many are left, how many are have tenants at the moment, and whether if they're finding it hard to get tenants, whether there could be different ways that could be done, and forming a structured body could actually help that. And there was one suggestion that maybe county farms could be turned into a community, registered as a community asset. So I think, was there anything else I've missed, Richard and Robin? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up.
That's fantastic. Some wonderful ideas already coming through. I sort of feel like, whoa, we're off. But thank you very much, Rebecca. And let's just hear from room 6. So that's with Sarah and Scott and Sean, Tracy. Was someone going to speak on for that group?
Hello, I think I probably am, although I didn't choose it. We were a very interesting group. We had had strong views, and we had one person who was really an observer, which is fair enough if you come from a long way away. And it really bounced from certainly the difference between this large county and North Dorset is very different to because it's a very rural area, as against Bridport and its surroundings, which is a market town and has perhaps more of a reputation, but it most definitely the existential threat of not having enough food was an overriding thing, and there was some awful stories about, you know, whether you could afford to wash yourself, which meant heating your water, or whether you came to the food bank to eat. So I really shouldn't speak for everyone, that I have my doubts of a county-wide affair, because I know that you'll spend a hell of a lot of time doing Zooms, and actually this is about real people and real circumstances, and actually seeing this poverty in action. Yes, so maybe I can be convinced that as a larger group we have more power to change governments and people who are supposed to represent us. But please, could somebody else respond to this as well, because it wouldn't be a fair representation otherwise.
Thanks very much, Sarah. That's helpful to hear what you've said, for sure. Does anybody else from that group want to add anything at this stage? Okay, so
yeah, yes, I would.
Hello, Scott.
Yeah. Well, I thought Sarah gave a pretty good representation of our discussion. I probably was one of the more vocal people. So, I mean, I live in North Dorset, and you know, North Dorset is a very different panoply from the south of Dorset. South Dorset, you know, big towns, maybe cities. We deal with a different thing because we have lack of rural transportation, and it's difficult, you know, to get to places if you're reliant on any form of public transport. I totally agree with Carol, surprisingly, given that we're on very opposite ends of the political spectrum. But she is right. You know, we're dealing with a food catastrophe. People are starving. They don't have enough food, and we don't know where to get it. There is a reduction in the amount of surplus food available. So the supermarkets, all the stories that you know. And there's a huge increase in demand. So that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we don't know how to fill it. So Carol with her pantry and me with my larders. We are really, really struggling to find ways to find food, affordable food which is wholesome, good for the planet and all the rest of it, to provide to people. This is really, really serious. Now, the title of this thing is all about sustainable Dorset, sustainable food. Well, I think Dorset can actually, in its entirety, do a pretty good job. If we got together our food banks, our pantries, our larders, our open houses, our fathers' houses, and all the rest of it that's going on, maybe if we got together and, as Carol says, use our purchasing power to buy food sensibly at the cheapest possible price and using a bit of charity, then maybe we could do something which would make a huge difference and be sustainable, at least in the short term. Because what we're talking about, and I think we discussed this in our little group, sustainability has kind of two pieces of the timetable. Sustainability in what Carol and I are dealing with is tomorrow. Sustainability in what other people might be thinking about, is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. That won't exist for Dorset unless we start feeding people properly and do it now. So we do have a possibility.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Scott. That's really helpful perspective to add tonight. That's really helpful. I'm going to have to stop you there just so that we can round up the evening together. And can I pass back to John? Would you
Thank you. I
Yeah.
think the breadth of conversation, the diversity here has been absolutely amazing, and I just wanted to share with you the screen view of the analysis of your SurveyMonkey responses, just to show the breadth of interest across all of the 6 dimensions that have been mentioned. The one that's a bit shorter in orange is catering and procurement, which is probably no surprise from the group. But even that, that there's 7 people here tonight have got an interest in engaging with some of those issues. I think that what it shows is the fact that we have that concept of interdependency, that the short term, the long term, the big pictures, the working together, and the fact that we have our best chance of doing things if we do them as a collective, so that we can lean on one another to find these solutions. Some of them will need scale. Some of them will be fine just doing individual things in small places. But quite a lot of the work that is happening currently benefits from us doing these things collectively, as Scott intimated, Carol's mentioned, but also others have mentioned around things like working with children and young people to help them understand about their food nutrition, where things are grown, and growing things in projects, and also looking at the wider questions around land use, which have been mentioned tonight as well. So I think in conclusion, from my perspective, I think the broadly speaking, we've had a very positive response to taking this conversation further, to working towards thinking about what a partnership around a sustainable food place would look like. We will be in touch to help connect everybody up. I think this was one of the questions, how do we know who's out there and what's going on? Are there allies out there that we can lean on and that we can get involved or be supported by or support one another? We will do that in terms of the follow-up to this meeting, with the idea that perhaps some of these themes that we've got here might develop into networks of new networks, as well as supporting existing networks around some of these topics, and to bring people together to do that. We'll have some discussions and some options about how that might happen, whether that's through creating WhatsApp groups, or whether it's creating newsletters, or putting some thematic stuff onto the internet, or having some more meetings around these themes together as different opportunities emerge. There are lots of things that are going on in the food landscape within Dorset in terms of food activities around the county, where we could perhaps continue these conversations. At the last meeting, there was a discussion where Bridport was offering to host or to extend their work and around their food events, to welcome people in, to have discussions and to do a pop-up and have a community engagement around food as part of one of their food activities. That could be something that we look at more widely. I'm glimpsing and trying to catch Kaz's eye on that, for instance, around some of the food festivals and food celebrations. Let's engage the public and engage other people in our local areas as well. So I think from here, my passion is of, I think probably quite clear in this space. I think we've got some huge opportunities, but I think to build those connections around those themes is probably going to be the next step for us in developing what this partnership could achieve. So please expect some emails and some requests for ideas and help. Not expecting to kind of, as was suggested, beat you over the head with umpteen Zoom meetings. That's not the intention at all. But can we ignite and can we foster these good connections that we've been sharing tonight in that structured way that allows us to progress along some very deliberate challenges and things that we want to do together around this whole wide spectrum of food resilience and sustainable food in Dorset. Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, am I on?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I agree with all that, but I do think that we should have an agenda. I do think that we should have, some actions that we're going to take. Otherwise, these things become just talking shops. So, can't we agree on 2 or 3 specific actions that we are all going to take that will make a difference before it's too late?
Thank you. B, do you want to come in?
Yes, thanks. Fear of bringing up a huge new thing right at the end of the meeting, but I mean, I feel very powerfully affected by what Scott and Carol have said about just the urgency of addressing food poverty issues. And it struck me that one very, very concrete practical action that we could take if we did move forward as a food partnership is there's a project in Cumbria called Homegrown Here, which is basically a vegetable box scheme. And like many veg box schemes during the COVID lockdown, they just found suddenly that demand was way outstripping supply. They're not organically certified, although they grow organically themselves, but they basically contracted various local farmers to grow crops to feed into the box scheme. And I was just thinking, talking about the bulk buying, but also the fear of sort of bulk buying highly processed, unhealthy food, would there be any mileage in approaching some existing farmers to grow some bulk crops for the various pantries that could then be divided out and distributed to people who really need it? Because I mean, something like kale or squashes, or you could grow quite a lot of that. And I mean, some of it obviously needs picking and harvesting and distributing on a weekly basis, but something like squashes for the autumn, and I realize the autumn is several months away, but that is an idea of a practical, tangible thing that this network could do, connecting people who've got knowledge of food production with people who've got knowledge of health and food poverty. So just throwing that into the mix. But if we did decide to do that, we'd need to act really, really quickly because farmers are deciding what they're going to grow right now. So we would need to do it soon.
Thanks, B. I think there we go. There's a very concrete example of a call and response. I think in terms of responding to Scott's challenge about practical action, I think that there's clearly opportunity for practical action. I think depending on which of these threads and themes that we want to work on, the practical action is going to be different. So I think that we will look at some of those things and encourage people to kind of participate in exactly as Bea was suggesting there, looking at creative options, looking at those wider things. That's exactly what this wider network, the idea of building towards a food place, should be focusing on. Is that kind of rolling up your sleeves, putting on your wellies, and getting out there and making a difference. So I don't think there's any lack of urgency and commitment in any of this. It's just about finding the right things in the right places to contribute to make that difference. So in short, in terms of reaching the end here, to say that we will send out the summary of all the comments that are made tonight and make some suggestions for the next steps from this, and send you the links to the things that have been mentioned in the chats as well, in terms of the sustainable food place next steps, and how to kind of keep this momentum moving forward.
Thanks very much, John. That's great. And can I just remind you that, so we just have 2 or 3 more minutes to go. If you'd like to be kept in the loop, then please do put your email in the chat. If you have any further comments, because we'll be going through the chat and looking at all the points that have been made there, as well as what's been said in the meeting. If you want to join Dorset Climate Action Network, please just go to our website and sign up there, and various newsletters that come out from there. We will look at everything that's been said at this meeting and come back with next steps that we can see going forward. I just wanted to also thank Rebecca B for your contribution this evening and for giving us time. It's great that you could make it.
Pleasure. It's really great to be part of it.
Great. And Scott, did you want to add something before we go? Sorry, just saw your hands up.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No. Oh, you can. Okay. So I would have thought we could have left this with an agreed action, even if it's only one. So maybe everybody that's prepared to roll their sleeves up and in the next 14 days do something which will make a demonstrable difference to the situations that 14% of the people in Dorset find themselves in. Could we do that? Can we somehow, kind of make that happen? Can we get people's energy, not, in a video call, Zoom call, or whatever, but to really do something?
Would you like to tell us what would you tell us what you'll be doing, and then that might inspire us to?
Well, our little group is running 6 pop-up larders every week across North Dorset. We're feeding, I think, north of 1,000 people.
Fantastic.
We're raising money to buy chickens. So we're at £3.85 a piece. We're buying large chickens to put into our larders, because Fair Share, an organisation together with the Trussell Trust, who tries to access so-called surplus food from the supermarkets, are doing a fantastic job, but the amount of food that's becoming available from the supermarkets is going down. The amount of demand is going up. And somehow we have to fill that gap. And we're talking about a lot of people. So in North Dorset, it's 8,000, 9,000 people probably. We're managing to get to 1,000 of them. So we are collecting money to buy chickens to give to those people. And I know it's not vegan. I know it's not pescatarian. I know it's not vegetarian. But at least it's a go.
Thank you very much.
So that's what we're doing. And there are other people in this call who are doing the same, the same kind of thing. But it's not enough, and it's not sustainable.
Okay,
So
thank you.
this is a group of people that want to do that. Then maybe, you know, we can pile together our collective efforts and energies and resources.
Thank you. That's great to have those ideas. Can I ask Ellie? I think you've got your hand up. Want to add something?
Yeah, I have a specific action which I'm not entirely sure I'm best placed to undertake. I was wondering if anyone had any connection with Dorset Council and might be able to reach out to them to see how they feel about the sustainable food place idea and whether they would want to get involved, because Devon as a sustainable food place, their food partnership is strongly led by Devon Council. And I know there's been some debate about whether or not county-wide is the best place to do that, but maybe we should see if there is any interest, try and gauge that and see if we can get some help from them, even if it's not a county-wide effort. I am happy to reach out if no one else knows the council, but I expect someone does have a better in than me.
Thanks very much.
That would be an opportunity maybe to have some education across counties through a Zoom environment. I mean, I know Zoom's not wonderful. I understand that, but perhaps a representative from Devon could lead a workshop Zoom session. I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks Maya, and thanks for the suggestion, Ellie. I'll get back to you on that in terms of a few ideas of people who may be able to address Dorset Council with those questions.
Come in there.
Just one second. Sorry, Peter. Yes.
Yeah, just in response to Ellie's suggestion there, she's got connections with Bridport Town Council, and a couple of town councillors are also Dorset councillors, namely Kelvin Clayton and Dave Bolwell, the current mayor. So your best bet, I would suggest, is to talk to them, and that way it would get to, because I know both of them are on environmental and sustainability committees to do with Dorset Council. So I would suggest that's your best option.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah.
And
Ron?
Don't forget Dave Dixon, who left earlier. I know that he's working with them as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. John, did you want to?
We also have had councillors who are here tonight and others at other meetings here who've been amazingly engaged and supportive of a whole range of things. So I think we're working with a very activated and very engaged council already. And I think not just mentioning the councillors who've been incredibly supportive for a lot of these conversations, but also the executive as well. So the officers and so on in the various parts of the council who are interested and working on this too is a huge thing, Ellie. And I think you're absolutely right. I think to have the councils and health colleagues and so on involved in these discussions will add enormous value and breadth of support there. So good shout.
We'll take that as the next step forward as well. Great. So thank you so much for all the different views expressed here tonight. Oh, Rebecca, your hand's gone up.
I was just thinking in answer to Scott's cry for practical suggestions. I mean, I could put a call out to our Southwest Land Workers Alliance regional group to see if there are any growers in the Dorset or North Dorset area who'd be willing to do a sort of contract growing of certain crops that could feed into the pantry. I mean, most of our members are quite small, so I would have to give you that caveat. And in a sense, the example I gave earlier was going to conventional farmers who could grow like an acre of kale or something like that. But if that was something that was helpful and you wanted me to put them in touch, I could do that.
Thank you very much. That's a great offer. Yeah, thank you. Can you get in touch with each other? Scott, do you want to put your email in the chat or vice versa so that you can communicate?
I have them.
You have, great.
Oh, great. Is it? I'll have a look further up.
Okay, so I feel this discussion could go on. I have to say that it is 7:30. You're very welcome to stay on, but anybody who wants to go can now go. No, not at all. It's just to say thank you so much for the engaged discussion. And Yeah, and then a hand's gone up over there with Bev, so I will take that in a moment. But just to say that we will keep you informed with the next step. And yeah, that's the official end of the meeting. But
Okay.
Bev, speak to us quick before.
Yeah, really sorry to add the
Where's it
question
gone?
in a late stage, but really interesting to hear about things like the county farms and the growers maybe producing more through that. Are there any facilities to use that fresh food to process it, mainly plainly just, chopping and then freezing so that it can stay prepped and ready for cooking for those people who need it?
Does anybody have an answer to that question?
There are there are some projects that are doing that, and there are a variety of them, whether it's pressing apples and bottling apple juice and so on, or whether it's preparing fruit and vegetables and turning it into things that can be used and kept in store cupboards. Tumbledown Farm has done some work on that, for instance, in Weymouth. There are lots of other projects, small projects, doing that kind of work. I think that's a really rich source of support and a sort of, if we can weave that in, that would be absolutely fantastic. It's a really good shout, Bev.
Oh, sorry for the ignorant question. It's
Yes.
I don't know about it
trouble.
around here, but thank you very much for that.
It's no daft questions at all with this stuff. It's we
Great
only know the tip of the iceberg, so there's lots to learn.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much.
Right, I've got to go. I'm just going to say hello, Connie. Bye-bye, Connie. Bye.
Maya, thanks for coming. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So everybody,
Yeah.
Sandra, would you be able to give me Scott's email address? Because I can't see it. Or
Yes.
if you could put it there.
Yes. I'll make sure you get it
Okay, that's
afterwards,
great.
if not, if it doesn't come in now. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
Just sent it.
Oh,
Oh.
great.
All right. Why am I not seeing it?
Yes, I'm not seeing it.
And I couldn't see it in the earlier bit.
Not very tech savvy, probably.
Well,
Oh, there it is.
oh, got it.
Oh.
It's just taking a while to come up.
Now everybody can see it, and I'll be inundated all night.
All right. Oh, thanks to everybody for your contributions. It's been really helpful.
Thank you.
Cheerio. Bye, Robin. Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thanks,
Scott.
Sandra, John, for organising, Rebecca, for your contribution as well, and everyone else.
It's a pleasure.
thank
Bye,
you so
Ken.
much.
Nice to see you.
Take care. We look forward to the next steps. Cheers, guys.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Tracy. Thanks
Bye.
for
See
your
you,
help.
Tracy.